Right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Mid Sussex District Council Liquor Licensing Committee on Tuesday, the 26th of September. Right, my first job is to actually ask.
27th.
Pardon? 27th. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Right. You're quite right. To receive apologies for absence, there are none. To receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. There are none. Thank you very much indeed. The procedure the licensing panel will follow in considering the application is set out in the Licensing Act 2003 and its attendant regulations, and it was agreed by the Licensing Committee on the 2nd of February 2005. The licensing panel, in accordance with Rule 14 of the Licensing Act 2003 brackets, hearings, close brackets, Regulation 2005, decide to exclude the public from all or part of the hearing where the licensing panel considered that it is in the public interest to do so. I'm going to hand over now to the licensing officer, John Bryan. Thank you.
Chair, thank you. Panel, thank you. The matter before the panel today is the determination of an application to vary a current premises licence. In summary, an application pursuant to Section 34 of the Licensing Act has been made by Flint Bishop Solicitors on behalf of Poynings Property Limited to vary the premises licence at the Royal Oak, the Street, Poynings. Representations against the application have been made by 6 interested parties on the grounds of the prevention of a public nuisance. The substance of the variation is to vary the current premises licence plan to operate an outside bar in the existing outside drinking area, which is part of the currently licensed area, and to amend the additional conditions currently attached to the licence. The committee is therefore asked to determine this application in accordance with the Licensing Act 2003, the Mid Sussex District Council licensing policy, and the Home Office guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, whilst having due regard to the applicant's submissions and relevant representations made by the interested parties. In background, in the report, the panel will see that Poynings Property Limited are the holder of a premises licence for the Royal Oak in Poynings. It's issued under licence number PWA 0304, and the pub has held a premises licence since the introduction of the Licensing Act 2003, and previously under the previous Act, the Licensing Act 1964. The 1964 Act licence was transferred to the existing licensing regime. I've set out in the report the hours and activities that the Royal Oak is currently licensed for, which are there for the panel to view. And the additional conditions that are currently attached to the licence, in addition to the mandatory conditions is that no drinks or open containers, e.g. glasses and open bottles, to be taken from the premises, including the garden. Prominent signs shall be displayed at exits asking customers to leave quietly. There is a condition that no regulated entertainment of any type should take place on the premises, but the panel will be aware that that condition was suspended with the effect of the Live Music Act of 2012, and any person who appears to be under the age of 18 who is attempting to buy alcohol shall be required to produce proof of age before such a sale is made. It should be noted that the applicant submitted a previous application to vary the premises licence in April 2022. This prior application was withdrawn, and therefore the committee should disregard references to the withdrawn application, as that is not under consideration. The application before the committee is to amend the current plan of the licensed premises to incorporate the addition of sale of alcohol from an external bar. It's requested that the sale of alcohol from the outside bar is permitted daily until 2200 hours, and the amended plan is attached to the report at Appendix 2, and I will go through the appendices for the panel when we get to them. The applicants have also requested that the following condition is removed. No drinks in open containers, e.g. glasses and open bottles, to be taken from the premises, including the garden, and they've asked it to be replaced by a condition stating customers will not be permitted to remove from the premises any drinks supplied by the premises, alcoholic or otherwise, in open containers unless to an external area set aside for consumption. and a person who appears under the age of 18 who's attempted to buy alcohol shall be required to produce proof of age before such a sale is made. This condition is to be removed as it's already included in the mandatory conditions held within the licence, and it is in essence superfluous. No representations to this application have been received from any of the responsible authorities. 6 representations have been received from members of the public, which are referred to as interested parties within the Act. The main points raised within the representations that are relevant relate to the licence and objective of the prevention of a public nuisance. These representations have not been resolved. The application was correctly advertised at the site and also within the Mid-Sussex Times within the time limits allowed by the regulations. You have 2 of the interested parties present to give their representations in person. So I won't dwell too much on those because the interested parties will be able to give you their full representations. But I will note that the full representations received by the licensing team are attached to the appendices to the reports for all the interested parties. There are a number of issues raised within the representations which are not considered by the licensing team to be relevant to this application. For example, those concerning odour, parking, noise. The committee, yourselves acting as a licensing authority, will disregard comments that are considered by yourselves as not relevant, and yourselves are the final arbiters as to what representations you do regard as being relevant and those you regard as being not relevant. Mr Sebley, who's present, he makes representations on the grounds of public nuisance, in essence concerns the potential for increased public nuisance through the intensified use of the outside area. He raises other issues concerning odour and traffic. He does suggest a compromise that the outside bar should only be open between 11 AM and 6 PM Saturdays and Sundays and closed on weekdays. His representations are attached in full at Appendix 6. Mr Comber is present. He makes extensive representations on various grounds and his full representations are attached. He has disputed that his representations are considered not to be relevant, and as I said, the committee are best placed to determine which parts of the representation are relevant to his application following his submissions. His representations are attached at Appendix 7. Jan Nichols has made representations on the ground of prevention of public nuisance, and the content of the representation is that they consider the application will lead to an intensification of the use of the outside area, and as a result will cause increased public nuisance through noise. I received a subsequent email from Jan Nichols confirming that she wouldn't be attending the hearing. She did think a hearing was necessary. She does not wish another named person to attend the hearing on her behalf, and her representations are attached at Appendix 8. Adrian Sallinson has made representations on the grounds of prevention of public nuisance, and it's in relation to the potential intensified usage of the Royal Oak Beer Garden, and again his representations are attached at Appendix 9. Peter Holly and Justin Johnson have made similar representations on the grounds of the prevention of public nuisance, and again they concern the potential for public nuisance being caused through the potential increased usage of the outside area. Their representations are attached in full at Appendix 10. Erica and Lloyd Hampshire have made representations on the grounds of prevention of public nuisance, again concerning the potential for public nuisance being caused through the increased usage of the outside area. Their representations are attached in full at Appendix 11. I did receive a subsequent communication from Erica Hampshire. She says that neither herself or a partner would be able to attend and they won't have representation at this hearing. They do believe a hearing would be useful to fully discuss and resolve the implications of the application. They mentioned that she felt that her representation had been inaccurately summarised by myself. Her objections are on the grounds of public nuisance, however are centred mainly around the licensing of the outside space for the duration of the inside licence, which appears unnecessary and in contravention to the licensee's stated aims. And she states it would permit unregulated entertainment 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. that she would accept operation of the outside bar at peak times over the weekends and for occasional events, e.g. public holidays, as a compromise. I would point out to the panel that, as stated, and as the panel knows, the Live Music Act makes various entertainment deregulated under certain circumstances, and as the area forms part of the premises licence, that entertainment is deregulated and wouldn't form part of representations in respect of this application. But again, it's something for the panel that may want to consider in due course following the representations of the parties present. I've set out the policy context for the panel, detailing the acts and section within the Licensing Act of 2003, and the committee must determine this application in accordance with the Licensing Act 2003, the Mid-Sussex District Council licensing policy, and the Home Office guidance under section 182 of the Licensing Act, whilst having due regard to the applicant's submissions and the relevant representations that are made. You see that sections 34 and sections 35 of the Act detail with the way that application to vary a premises licence and considerations of the determination should be taken place, and obviously if the panel have got any queries with regard to that, Paul Vickers, the council's solicitor, is here to advise the council in that respect. Relevant representations. The Licensing Act of 2003 requires representations to address the four licensing objectives, which are the prevention of crime and disorder, the promotion of public safety, the prevention of a public nuisance, and the prevention of harm to children and young persons. It sets out that a representation is a relevant representation. It is if it is about the likely effect of the grant of the licence or the variation on the promotion of the licensing objectives. The objector must establish that a consequence is a likely effect of the grant, i.e. more probable than not. The panel will be well aware of the guidance issued under section 182 of the Licensing Act. I have set out relevant parts of it. At section 9.3, where a representation concerning the licensing objective is made by a relevant party, the licensing authority's discretion will be engaged. Relevant representations can be made in opposition to or in support of an application. The representation is relevant at 9.4 if it relates to the likely effect of the grant of the licence on the promotion of at least one licensing objective. It then gives an example within the guidance, and it further states that for representations in relation to variations to be relevant, they should be confined to the subject matter of the variation. There's no requirement for a responsible authority or other person to produce a recorded history of problems at a premises to support their representations. And just to reiterate to the panel that this meeting is not a review of the current licence held by the Royal Oak. It's not a review of their exemption to regulated entertainment under the Live Music Act. It's solely with respect to the application which has been made to vary the licence. I have set out within the guidance, it's for the licensing authority to determine whether representation is frivolous or vexatious, i.e. not relevant, and also that it's recommended that in borderline cases the benefit of the doubt about any aspect of representation should be given to the person making that representation, and as it states, the subsequent hearing would then give an opportunity for the person or body making the representations to amplify and clarify it. Hence, the full representations are attached at the appendices for the panel's attention. In determining, as a matter of practice, the licensing authority should seek to focus a hearing on the steps considered appropriate to promote the particular licensing objective or objectives that are given rise to the specific representation and avoid straying into disputed areas. A responsible authority or other person may choose to rely on their written submission as the first four interested parties, the subsequent four interested parties who are not attending have done so. They may not add further representations to those disclosed to the applicant prior to the hearing, but they may expand on their existing representation and obviously this should be allowed sufficient time to do so within reasonable and practicable limits. In determining the application with a view to promoting the licensing objectives, the overall interests of the local community, the licensing authority must give appropriate weight to the steps that are appropriate to promote the objectives, the representations, including supporting information presented by all the parties, the guidance issued under Section 182 and the Council's own statement of licensing policy. It states that the licensing authority is the best place to determine what actions are appropriate for promotion of the licensing objectives in their areas, and all licensing determinations should be considered on a case-by-case basis. They should take into account any representations or objections that have been received from responsible authorities or other persons, and the representations made by the applicant or premises user, as the case may be. I've set out the other options. Any final decision made by the committee in this matter is subject to an appeal in the Magistrates' Court by any of the parties to the proceedings. And if I move on to the background papers, Appendix 1, you have the application form. Together with, at Appendix 2, the current premises licence plan. I will draw the attention to the panel to the plan which outlines the current premises licence area, and also to the insert in the top left-hand part of the plan, which indicates in block the outline of the current area licensed by the current premises licence. At Appendix 3, we have the proposed new plan, and you'll see that the external bar area is marked in red by the applicant as to where that will be located. The next, at Appendix 4, is a area plan of the pub. You see the pub situated in the middle. You can see the car park and the pub garden area just to the south of the car park, bordering onto Poynings Road. At Appendix 5, we have a selection of photographs of the panel detailing the area. The first photograph is the front of the pub, then the access to the car park, which runs round to the back of the pub. The next two photographs are the car park area, the view of the outside bar from the entrance to the car park, a further view of the outside bar from the next photographs, including various angles across the garden area. And then we come to the appendices detailing the representations. Appendix 6 is the full representation from Mr. Sibley, who's present. Appendix 7 are the full representations from Mr. Comber, who's present. Appendix 8 is the representations from Jan Nichols, which I've outlined. Appendix 9 from Adrian Sallinson. Appendix 10 from Peter Holly and Justine Johnson. And Appendix 11 from Erica and Lloyd Hampshire. And at Appendix 12, I have detailed the proposed additional conditions which are proposed by the applicant. That is the matter before the panel for determination today. And unless I can assist the panel any further, that's the details of the report.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Bryan. I should have actually introduced the panel, actually. It's not something we do this regularly, these hearings, so I'll going to catch up on that slip. I'm Clive Leband. To my left, I've got Councillor Mockford and Councillor Henwood. And to my right, I've got Paul Vickers, who is our legal advisor today. John Bryan is our licensing officer. In the corners, we've got admin staff at both ends, Alison and Alex. We have interested parties, Mr. Sibley and Mr. Comber over here, I guess. Sorry, I'm missing out. Sorry. And the applicant to our right. I'm going to invite the applicant to direct. Oh, that's right. Where are we? I'm losing my place, sorry. I'm going to invite the interested parties one by one to answer questions or to direct questions to the senior licensing officers. And so I'm going to open proceedings to invite, is it George Domleo to start, if you can, please. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I hope everyone is keeping well. So I'm here on behalf of Flint Bishop Solicitors, and I represent the applicant Poynings Property Limited. Here with me today I have Jonathan Fernandez, who is one of the general managers of the Royal Oak, along with Sol McLawson, who is also the designated premises supervisor on the premise licence. So by way of background, councillors, Heineken, who are the third largest brewery in the world, and have approximately 2,500 licensed premises in their estate across England, Wales and Scotland, are the landlord of the Royal Oak. There is a lease agreement in place with Poynings Property Limited, who they work closely together with to make the premises successful and an asset to the local community. To provide you with some further background, councillors, Sol and Jonathan have operated the Royal Oak for the last 2 years. They are both very experienced in the licensed trade. With them before the Royal Oak, they previously ran a hotel in Oxford, along with Sol having run 4 pubs, and both Jonathan and Sol have worked in the holiday parks and complex estates previously, and Jonathan worked in that area for 20 years. Now, I don't know whether you're aware of the Royal Oak, councillors, but there's been a Royal Oak on this site, or that site, since the 1880s. It is a beautiful country pub in the heart of the National Park, full of character and charm and real fires, serving real ale and real pub food, which I had the pleasure of visiting last night. My client took on the premises in 2015, and since then they have invested over £400,000 into it, which is a substantial amount and is required for it to remain a local community hub. However, operating this quintessential village pub does, as my client will confirm, come with its difficulties. The internal bar servery is not the biggest, and trying to provide a full service to the external areas from this space alone when the pub is busy and operating at full capacity is near on impossible for my client. You will have seen the photos in your agenda pack, which Mr. Bryant has referred to, of the external bar servery, which my client has constructed to a very high standard. This has cost them £35,000, and I submit as a welcome addition to the external area. Pubs need to evolve and require ongoing investment to ensure they keep pace with changing consumer needs and to stay relevant to the community it serves. So the purpose of the outside bar is for a number of reasons. As I've already alluded to, the internal bar servery is not the biggest and cannot cope with all the customers coming in to purchase drinks and the queuing at the bar. My client does not want this to happen, as it will become overwhelmed and spoil the characterful nature of the pub internally. Customers with children in the beer garden would have to think about leaving their children unattended to come into the bar to purchase drinks. The journey from the pub to the external areas is not short, and having my client's staff try to carry a full tray of drinks to its customers can be very difficult. And lastly, we all know that following the unprecedented times we've experienced over the last couple of years, customers at licensed premises are going to want to, subject to our weather, sit outdoors. People still feel more comfortable being outdoors. And with the addition of the outside bar, this will allow customers to do this and will aid with social distancing. Please also note, councillors, that we are talking about an outside bar, which again, given our weather, is generally very likely to only be used for 6 months of the year, and the same can be said for the external customer area. I would also point out, councillors, that Jonathan and Sol have used 25 days worth of their tens this year to sell alcohol from the outside bar servery already, and we're not aware of any issues being raised with the use of this. I submit, councillor, this is a very sensible and considered application. There is nothing unusual with this application, and many of our clients in similar locations use outside bars. We have proposed for the external bar servery to only be used until 10 p.m. My client is aware of the pub's location and residents living nearby. They don't want to create a noise nuisance. Furthermore, councillors, and as you've heard from Mr. Bryant, none of the responsible authorities, including environmental health or the police, have objected to this application, which I submit is a very important consideration for you when arriving at your decision today. These authorities are the experts in their fields and on a daily basis deal with licensed premises, and their overriding consideration at all times are to the licence objectives, and in particular the prevention of crime and disorder and prevention of public nuisance. As we have stated in the application, we are seeking the external bar servery in order to take the pressure off the main bar server inside at the premises at peak trading times, to facilitate social distancing and to create a better customer experience. My client employs up to 45 team members in the summer months, which is good for the local economy and community. With the outside bar in use, this will mean that at least 2 members of staff will be manning it at all times whilst it is in use, with several other staff monitoring the external area and glass collecting, which would ensure that there will be a permanent staff presence in the external area. We do, however, have the 6 representations against the application from the local residents, and this is the reason why we are here today. We do fully appreciate that there is, in the majority of cases, always going to be some anxiety in relation to any application. The majority, if not all, of the representations claim that the introduction of an external bar servery is going to lead to an intensification of use of the outside area, which will cause issues. I disagree with this statement, councillors. The external areas are already in use, so I don't understand why the external area is going to be used any more often with it having a bar. With respect, whilst not at all unreasonable, the concerns expressed about the use of the bar are purely speculative. It's a potential. There's no evidence been submitted as of yet. And furthermore, councillors, the representations are more akin to an application to review the licence, which, as you've heard from Mr Bryant, this is not in this instance. As I've previously submitted, councillors, the purpose of the outside bar is to relieve the pressure of the main bar inside at weekends or when the premises gets rather busy. The outside bar is not going to be used on a daily basis, given our weather, but more and as and when it's needed, so my client would like the flexibility for this. And having the outside bar will allow the Royal Oak to provide a better standard of service to the wider community and continue to help with facilitating social distancing. My client is a responsible operator. The proposed 10 p.m. cut-off time for the use of the outside bar is appropriate and proportionate. Given the information I have already provided to you, I see no issues with you granting this application, and the premises will continue to promote the licensing objectives. However, should the premises in the future cause any issues for the local residents, which I no doubt will not happen, then the residents and the authorities do have plenty of recourse to take enforcement action, such as seeking a review of the premise licence or serving my client in the premises with a noise abatement notice under the Environmental Protection Act 1919. My client is effectively continuing to invest a considerable amount of money into the premises for it to remain an asset to the local area and for it to provide amenities for families and customers to enjoy. The granting of our application will allow the premises to continue to flourish. And for these reasons, councillors, I would ask you to grant the application as it appears before you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, thank you very much indeed. I need to actually ask my panel members if they would like to ask any questions before we proceed any further. Please, Councillor Henwood. Thank you.
You mentioned that usage. Would you anticipate much usage during the winter? In other words, have you got any facilities for customers who are going outside to perhaps stay warm?
Hi committee, I'm Sol, Lawson, the DPS. The usage of the outside bar for the winter times would actually be very minimal, if any at all, to be honest with you. It's basically for summer trade and for health and safety reasons is why we put it out there, and to help promote our licensing objectives. In regards to, we have a play park, so make sure children are protected and we can manage that more, but it's very minimal in winter, if any.
So therefore you would shut it down for
Yes.
a certain period of time?
Yes, as we speak now, obviously we do not have permission to use it, it's shut down. If we were, sorry, I'm a bit nervous. If we were granted permission, we have no foreseeable plan to reopen it for this winter. So it's just for the national park use, really. That stipulates when the weather's nice and we get busy naturally.
Thank you.
I hope that answered your question.
Thank you.
I'm happy with that.
Can I clarify the answer to that question, if we may? I think the question was specifically, do you have any heating in the garden?
At a particular moment, yes, we do. We have some gas patio heaters They are used sporadically if customers request.
Thank you very much. I'm going to start by asking the the interested parties, Mr. Sebley, I think, to start first, if you can. If you, I beg your pardon?
I was going to say, tell him how to.
Yeah, thank you. In order to speak, can you push the right hand button, and that should flash. And when it goes red, you'll be amplified and we'll be able to hear you, specifically me.
It's gone red.
Yep, please, go ahead.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Can I take it that the councillors have read the representations? Thank you. And I listened to what the applicant solicitor said. I've lived in Poynings for 25 years, and indeed, there's never been a problem with the pub, and the previous managers were very sensitive to the local residents in terms of what went on in both the noise caused by various events. The matter is very complicated, and whilst I hear Mr. Bryant's direction on the representations can only be made under those 4 areas, they are also interconnected, and there are others that fall into it, as I hopefully will quickly outline. There is a delicate balance between a pub wanting to make money, provide a facility for the locals, though actually it isn't just the locals. There is an awful lot of people that come out from Brighton to use it because it is a close village pub in a national park where there are walks on the hills. And the residents who live there. What is interesting in your pack of photographs is that there is only one photograph, not clear, and it is the aerial view that shows where the residents are. And if you look at that photograph, the aerial view, you'll see that there is a road that runs through Poynings. It's called Poynings Road. It's also called the street, but on this particular photograph, it's called Poynings Road. What isn't clear is above where it says Royal Oak Pub Poynings, there are 4 cottages, actually there are 5, but for our purposes, there are 4 cottages and 3 houses with their own courtyard, and that is a residents' association. So we hear any noise that is made in that garden. If you look to the south or below where it says Poynings Road, you'll see a range of houses, some of which you've made representations in your pack. The issue with the village is that the road infrastructure isn't big enough if you allow more people to come to the pub to create more noise because you make it easier for them to serve alcohol in the garden. Because that road, which is normally a dual lane highway, becomes a single lane highway because there are people always parked from where the pub is located down to the right where it says Robin Cook, professional photographer. In the high season, that is in the summer, there have been in the past many problems with cars jamming up, coming from both the left and the right on your photograph and causing a massive problem. Furthermore, those that want to access or leave their houses to go either west or east down Poynings Road are unable to do so because of the pub traffic. What is also not mentioned is that the road going up into the car park that you can see to the right of the pub has 2 rights of way over it. One is a public right of way, and the other is our Poynings Residents Association right of way. That has a direct bearing on the amount of children and people using the pub, and we have to manoeuvre extremely carefully for health and safety reasons. So I consider that to be apposite. Parking is in that car park that you can see on the plan, on the photograph rather, but the pub, of course, has been trying to increase the footfall, or if you like, trade, by taking the field to the north of that car park and using it as an overspill car park, where there is no planning permission so to do. They have also been people using that field, parking there as a football kick around. They've also been using it as an extension for places to eat. All this adds to noise. All this adds to extra people using a smallish pub in a national park where the infrastructure doesn't allow growth. I hear what the applicant says about pubs needing to develop. Well, of course it needs to develop for commercial reasons to make more money, but at the expense of the residents. Since the current pub management have been there, there has been no interest in talking to the residents and warning them about any events that they have. For example, whilst that bar that we're here to talk about today has been open, they have had temporary event notices in place, which we, as normal residents, don't get to find out about until the event happens. Interestingly, they've had those temporary event notices in place since the 23rd and 24th of July for each weekend, up to the 3rd and 4th of September. They have operated the bar selling alcohol on 3 days in that period without a temporary event notice. And I put it to you that that is a criminal offence. That is the level of care that the current management take. It is evidence that when they opened the bar illegally at the Easter weekend, that caused such a nuisance that I actually contacted the senior licensing officer here present to say, is there a license for this? And it was then discovered that no license existed whatsoever. So the management and, if you like, the owners who are not here have this attitude of, oh, well, let us just get on with it until someone says don't do that because there is no permission. There is other evidence. There is evidence of misuse of the marquee, both in terms of when it should be erected and when it should be deflated. The use of amplified music, but that perhaps isn't particularly germane to this case. So what the actual pub management are after, as far as we, the local residents, are concerned, is an ability without any care of how we feel or what we think or whether noise affects us. And for me, noise affects me if I can hear anything in that pub within my house with the doors closed. Of course, in the summer, it's reasonable to expect the windows open. And of course, there is a separate procedure for noise complaints with the Mid-Sussex environmental people. So really, all their plans are based upon trying to grow the pub, trying to grow the product in a small village that doesn't allow that from an infrastructure point of view. There is evidence that with the planning authority at South Downs, that they, having applied to vary the marquee erection, which was granted by Mid-Sussex back, I think, in 2011, to not only have the marquee there all year round, instead of from the 1st of April to the end of September, but to also have amplified music allowed to be played in that garden as well, which of course will create a noise nuisance. Lastly, the plan that's submitted with your package is possibly one of the worst I've ever seen in terms of understanding it. Is the drinking area where it says drinking area hashed the same as the car park? Are you allowed to drink in the car park? Are you allowed to park your car in the drinking area? I see that that hashed area of car park and drinking area covers the public right-of-way, which is that bit that goes up to the right-hand side of the pub. And where it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those are the cottages that I referred to earlier. Our houses just to the north of that are not there, but we have a gate there, not marked on the plan, that allows us a right-of-way out over that area in terms of accessing Poynings Road or the street. But I put it to you, there is a very real health and safety problem with small children, old people like me, going to the pub, using the pub, and we have to manoeuvre extremely carefully. Getting out onto Poynings Road is also another issue. So that particular plan for me, doesn't say anything. We've got, yes, the external bar, it shows that, but it doesn't actually show me where the drinking area actually is, where the car park actually is. It does show me where the play area is, and of course it does have the red line of the licence area. I have said in my representation that I'm happy to compromise that they can have their bar open at the weekends between the hours, I think, of 11 a.m. and 6 p.m. and close weekdays. I would like to withdraw that because of their deceitful, not anyone individually, but in fact Crowthers Association, to try and create more noise by trying to vary the marquee licence, which Mid Sussex granted back in 2011, for which they want amplified music every day of the week between, I think, 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. at night. So it is a small village. It's been there a long time. I've been there a quarter of a century. We've never had any problems until the current management and the two owners have been there. They don't wish to interact with us. There are many who haven't made representations that are annoyed with the way that the noise level in the pub interacts over the village itself, not just those of us that I've shown you that live close to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Sebley. Now, before, I meant to go actually back to the applicant, but before I do, I'm going to actually go back to the licensing officer, Mr. Bryan, to actually address some of the issues you've made in terms of what are relevant for the discussion, so that we can focus on those. Is that okay, Mr. Bryan?
Yeah, certainly, Chair, and I'm sure that you'll be able to discuss this with Mr. Vickers when you make your determination, if you've got any concerns with regard to what's relevant. What I would say is matters surrounding the marquee are not relevant. That is a matter for planning. Matters concerning amplified music is not relevant because it's covered by the Live Music Act and it's not regulated entertainment. Matters surrounding the infrastructure of the roads are not relevant to this application. The matters which are relevant for this application are solely those matters which address the substance of the variation. The plan which you see in front of you is the plan which has existed on the premises licence since it was granted under the Licensing Act of 2003. And there's been no query or confusion over the plan which is attached to the licence. And as I explained during my submission of the report, when the panel look at the plan, they will see in the top corner of the location plan where it is highlighted the exact extent of the premises licence. There's mention that part of the premises licence includes a public right-of-way. There is no restriction on the premises licence applying to private property only. We have a number of premises licences throughout the district which are on public land or on council land, so that is not a consideration at all. They're the points that I will obviously draw to the attention of the panel. It may well be that the applicant's representation may have other points that they wish to make with regard to Mr. Sebley's representation or questions they may wish to put to Mr. Sebley.
Thank you very much indeed. I think that's very, very clear. Where are we? Right, could I ask Mr. Domneo or the applicants to actually ask any questions at this stage from the representation that Mr. Sebley's made?
Thank you, Chair. No questions from ourselves. I think Mr. Bryan covered it perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you. I am confused by the diagram that does say, as adjacent to the road going into the car park, it says drinking area. I don't know what that particularly means. Presumably that's non-alcoholic. What could that be further? Is outside? Is it covered? Is it what? Thank you.
Councillor, thank you. The plan separates different areas of the the premises licence area into different areas. As you say, you've got 2 areas which are marked as drinking area, an area which is marked as a play area which is marked as the car park, and you've got the red line round the actual building. The actual area covered by the premises licence in the whole is the location plan, which is in your top, if you're looking at the plan, landscape in the top left-hand corner. That outlines the area, the insert, which is covered by the actual premises licensed area. It may well be that there are certain areas which are designated for different activities within the overall plan, but the actual premises licence covers the whole area within that insert plan, which includes all those particular areas which you've mentioned, Councillor.
If I can perhaps add something here.
Please, Mr. Vickers.
In essence, it doesn't matter too much what the labels that are attached to those specific areas within the licensed premises, what those labels are. They may not be entirely helpful. Things can move on as to, for example, what's marked as a drinking area could be changed to become a play area, but the entirety of the area is licensed premises. And the label is, I think, potentially for clarity, 17 years ago when the licence was transferred over in 2005 from the previous Licensing Act.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go, Mr. Comber. I gather you wish to ask a question.
Yeah, I do.
Thank you.
I've got a problem with paragraph 3 of the report because it creates the impression that...
Can I interrupt you just a moment and ask what page that's on?
Oh, sorry, it's not numbered. This is in the bundle. This is the report of Tom Clark, Head of Regulatory Services.
Wonderful, got it, thank you.
It's this expression, current licensed area, that I find very difficult. And I think I've had a discussion with Mr. Vickers on this question. And I think we're agreed that the bar is not currently in an area which is licensed for the sale by way of retail of alcohol. And that brings me to all this discussion about what a premises license is. The key expression is defined in section 11 of the Act, the Licensing Act. And it defines a premises license as a license granted in respect of any premises which authorizes the premises to be used for one or more licensed activities. Now, the only relevant licensed activity, I believe, for the Royal Oak is the retail sale of alcohol. And that takes place, the actual sale of alcohol takes place at the moment in the red-lined area inside the pub from the bar. I've lived 24 years in this development, just shorter than Tim. And always the sale of the alcohol has taken place from inside the premises. And I understand that, having looked on the internet and looked at what license listers, specialist license listers have written about the state of play prior to the 2003 Act, the old licenses used to have red-lined areas, and the red-lined area was defined as the area licensed for the retail sale of alcohol. And the red-lined area in this case defines what is in fact the area which is authorized for the sale of alcohol.
Mr. Comber, can I stop you there?
Yeah.
I think we understand your drift.
Yeah.
The application is to consider the permission or licensing
Yes.
of an external bar area for serving drinks in the garden. That's it. I'm going to actually close you down and go over to Mr. Vickers just to intervene before we actually go forward, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The licensed premises, as has been confirmed, is the whole area, as Mr. Bryant indicated earlier, is the entire area marked out there. The fact that a part of it, which is within the pub building itself, the main pub building, is what has been used to sell alcohol from hitherto, is, I suspect, if you're looking at the previous licensing regime and how the plans were marked out, that is a separate issue to what we're looking at today, which is the whole area is a licensed premise. It's licensed premises. The inside of the pub is what has been used to sell alcohol from under the licence, and the application is to vary so that in addition to the original licensed premises plan where the pub was used to sell alcohol, the simple application is to vary it by adding the small area outside the external bar. That's the application, and the purpose for today's committee hearing is to consider that application in relation to the objections, in relation to the licensing objections under section 4.2. We're not in a position where we're here to discuss or to debate the appropriateness of the application. The application has been heard, has been determined by the authority to be an appropriate application for variation under section 34, and the application that has been made is to be considered in conjunction with the licensing objectives by the committee. So I think it'd be helpful if we perhaps address any questions and any comment to the licensing objectives, and that because that's the purpose of today's hearing.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Vickers. Now I'm going to go back to Mr. Comber. Do you want to actually make a representation based upon the application as it is, please?
Yes, I do. Our main worry, and I think this is true of all of the people who've made representations, is over the problem which we've experienced when there is amplified music, when the pub is hosting wedding celebrations or other special events, and about disorderly behaviour when customers are gathering round drinking at an open bar. That's what we're worried about. This summer we've had 3 music events. The first one was, I think, on Easter Monday, and there was a singer there using amplified music. We were working in the garden. Our gardener was working in the garden, and my wife was in the garden. And throughout the whole of the afternoon, we had this music coming from the music, I call it music, but extremely poor performance by the singer. And it's just, it interferes with, we don't see why we should put up with music from the pub when we're outside in our garden. And equally, when we're indoors, when we've experienced music, we find that we have to take steps to blot everything out by turning up the television and stopping what we're doing. And So our problem is over intrusive noise from amplified music. There would be no problem at all if the pub complied with your guidance on noise nuisance from beer gardens, but they don't. And we think that you should make it a condition of the license that they do observe your guidance about avoiding noise nuisance. I think you have power to do it because at the moment there is no premises license in respect to the bar. As I understand it, the license that's being applied for the bar is merely to sell by way of retail alcohol and for that to be an off sale. At the moment, the on sales are in the red-lined area inside the pub. Sales to the garden are all off sales. So the Live Music Act exemption for music doesn't apply in relation to the garden. Because that isn't, as far as the Act is concerned, part of the licensed premises. The licensed premises are those which are authorized for the retail sale of alcohol. And there is nowhere in the garden, the outdoor area, which is licensed at the moment for that purpose. I believe, having read the Secretary of State's guidance, that where you've got a beer garden, where all that's happening is an off sale, it's possible to impose conditions in relation to the performance of live music. And what I'm asking is for the license. The license that's applied for is obviously a license to authorize not an on sale, because it's only the area of the bar. They're not selling within the area of the bar for consumption in that area. They're selling for consumption in an area which is not part of the licensed premises. Licensed premises and premises license are terms which are absolutely identical. And Section 11 is absolutely clear that it's only the area which is authorized for the sale of alcohol, a retail sale of alcohol, which is within the premises license. They're matching expressions. The premises license relates to the area which is authorized for the retail sale of alcohol. The only areas which are authorized for the retail sale of alcohol are those with the red line around them. And the only red line at the moment is within the pub. All the rest is outside the licensed premises. It's not authorized for the retail sale of... I'm sorry, that it's not true to say that the outside drinking area is part of the current licensed area. It's not part of the licensed premises, I can tell you, because the only part of the licensed premises is the red line area. That's why you're being asked for a license.
Thank you very much indeed. I'll come back on that. I'm going to ask Mr. Vickers to come back on that before we proceed any further. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lebrand. The situation is that the entirety of the area is licensed premises, And the condition of the licence is that the area that is used currently for the supply of alcohol is the area inside the pub, the bar. The reason that this is a variation is that the variation is to use an additional area for the supply of alcohol within the licensed premises. And that is why it's a Section 34 variation and not a Section 17 application for a fresh licence. Because were we to be making an application for a fresh licence, we'd essentially be saying that the same pub, the same licensed premises requires two separate licences for two separate facilities within the same pub, and that is not the situation. As I say, it's a Section 34 application, and any objections need to be in relation to the licensing objectives as set out in Section 4, subsection 2 of the Licensing Act, and not in relation to the procedure, which appears to be where we're going down at the moment. The issue is very simply that it's a Section 34 variation, and that's how the authority have accepted the application. And we are in a situation where, having accepted the application, you have the right to make an objection in relation to the licensing objectives under Section 4, subsection 2. Were it, in any event, to have been an application for a fresh licence, then you would still only be able to make an objection in relation to the licensing objectives under Section 4, subsection 2. So the objections in relation to a Section 34 variation or a Section 17 fresh application are the same. Any objections you wish to make should be directed to that, because I think, unfortunately, otherwise it's going to be very unhelpful if we're having a lengthy digression into the definitions under the Licensing Act, when in essence the decision to be made by the Licensing Committee today or the decision to be made is in relation to the application for the use of that outside bar. And the objections that you're entitled to make under the Licensing Act are those set out in relation to the licensing objectives: the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. And I think it would be very helpful if you were to focus your comments, questions, and responses to those, rather than to a question as to what you feel a red-lined area means on a map. So I think it would be helpful if we could perhaps carry on with the licensing objectives. Otherwise, this hearing is going to take a very long time.
Thank you. I'm going to move over now, thank you, Mr. Vickers, to the applicants, if you wish to actually direct any questions to Mr. Cromber. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. No questions. I hopefully should be able to cover a few points made in my submission at the end.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is open to all of you. Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Henwood.
Thank you. To the managers of the pub, so let us take a scenario. You have a temporary license, you're using the marquee, you're using amplified music. So I would like to know, one, where is the alcohol sold for the clients? Two, where is the alcohol consumed? And three, if the alcohol is not to be taken, as it says here, in open containers or open bottles from the pub, how do you inform your clients that this is the situation? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Basically, is that bar, the new bar, that hasn't been included yet, it's not licensed, with a sale of alcohol within the licensed area? Is it going to be permitted, yes or no? And if it is, does it require any conditions, yes or no? And that's what we're here for today.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So, quickly, people... Good afternoon. So a quick answer is, because it's a licensed area, people are allowed to take from the inside bar a glass of alcohol into the garden area. We don't have to explain to them about the extra condition, which means you can't take it off the licensed area.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you please ignore that? Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask Mr. Vickers to sum up, if I may, now. Thank you.
I think you mean Mr. Domleo, the solicitor to the...
Sorry, invite the solicitor, the applicant. Right. I beg your pardon. Mr. Donnelly, would you like to sum up?
No, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Can you wait a moment just for the...
Oh. I jumped the gun, sorry.
Thank you.
I believe the process is for the interested parties to go first if they want any summing up, and then I would speak last. Is that correct? I don't know whether the interested parties want to make any further or sum up.
Can you hang on just 1 second, if you can amplify, thank you.
The issue is that it is delicate, despite the fact we're here for a variation of the licence, whether the licence is correct or not. We understand what they're trying to do by creating a sale of drinks in the garden. However, this is going to attract even more people. They've demonstrated that they want to attract more people by having an overspill car park to the north of the car park you can see on the photograph. In that car park, outside any licence area, there has been beer, there has been food. And this hasn't been managed by the management of the pub. So what they're trying to do is increase the footfall. My problem is that it is already noisy. It was noisy when I first discovered that they used the illegal bar, for which they had no variation approval to do so. And by trying to grow the footfall in a small village where the infrastructure doesn't allow that, causes even more noise. And we know that because we've seen that. And that's why I had to come to licensing in the first place. They do want to make more noise. They do want to increase more footfall. And therefore, respectfully, councillors, we have, in the 25 years, managed quite well previously before the current management, and if you like, owners, that they report to, want to grow the business.
Right. Before we wrap that up, Mr. Sebley, do you have any questions for your neighbour on his representation?
No.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right. Now, I'm going to come in a minute. The one thing we haven't asked, and if I may ask the licensing officer to comment if it's appropriate, is have we received any complaints on the licensing objectives over the last 2 years or so from local residents, formal representations, i.e. complaints, either on our environmental health or on licensing?
Chair, I'm aware of 2 complaints which were made to the licensing authority. The first was in 2020, after the first COVID lockdown, when a premises is reopened. There was a complaint about noise, odour and people using the field to the side of the existing car park to use that for drinking. I visited and spoke to the DPS at the time, who was a different DPS to the current DPS that you have. I explained the issues and the complaints. Part of the complaints did not concern, were not substantiated. The complaints about drinking in the car park, that was allowed, one under the licence for the Royal Oak, which allows for consumption on and off the premises, and the restriction about it only being in sealed containers was negated by the Business and Planning Act, which was brought in, as the panel will know, in July 2020, which removed restrictive conditions on off-sales. So from a licensing point of view, there was no issues there. Issues for noise are directed towards the Environmental Protection Team. I had a number of complaints, I believe it was in May, which was of this year, which was the result of I believe a wedding, a music, which occurred in the outside area of the premises, which resulted in the previous application being withdrawn. Again, that was passed to the Environmental Protection Team to investigate the noise nuisance, and with regard to the music being played, as explained, music in the outside area, which is covered by the premises licence, is not regulated entertainment under the Live Music Act. However, I did highlight to the applicants that repeated complaints of a similar nature could result in action from the Environmental Protection Team in respect of a statutory nuisance, and could result, if there was sufficient information, of a review of their entitlement under the Live Music Act to have that as deregulated entertainment. Currently, music in that area is not regulated entertainment and is not licensable or subject to the licence.
Thank you very much indeed. That's very clear. Please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to keep this brief. As you've heard from Mr Vickers and Mr Bryant, our application is simply to permit the sale of alcohol from the external bar servery. At present, under the current premise licence, customers can pay for alcohol in the external area. They can also take orders, or staff can take orders from customers. So the application is purely to permit the sale of alcohol in that area. This application is not at the expense of the residents. Jonathan and Sol are residents themselves. They live in the cottage immediately behind the Royal Oak. They don't want to create a noise nuisance. It is a pub for the local community and also wider. As you've heard, the application is for the flexibility to use this external bar servery. It will predominantly be used during the summer months, given our weather, but if it is a nice day in September or October and the locals want to use it, or there are walkers nearby, then they would still like the flexibility to use it. As you've heard and as you can see, none of the authorities have objected to this application. I'm sure if Environmental Health or Police or Licensing Authority thought there were real concerns or that this variation or the granting of it would undermine the licence objectives, they would have objected, but that is not the case. I would draw your attention, councillors, to the section 182 guidance, and in particular paragraph 9.43. This states that the authority's determination should be evidence-based, justified as being appropriate for the promotion of the licence objectives and proportionate to what it is intended to achieve. Our proposal for the 10 p.m. cut-off time is, I submit, appropriate and proportionate in this instance, and we should be doing everything we can to support the right premises and the right operators and allow this premise to continue to flourish. And my final point, is, as I alluded to earlier, is that there is plenty of recourse available to the local residents and the authorities should things go astray. I'm not saying they will, but there is the proposal for the review of the premise licence, or as Mr Bryant alluded to earlier, Environmental Health to take action under the Environment Protection Act 1990. But as I said earlier, the premises should be allowed to continue to flourish. It is an asset to the local community, and I would grant the application as it appears before you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much
Is there
indeed.
anything else you guys want to add? No? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the thing that strikes me is the word compromise. I really do. I think you're part of their community and they're part of your community. So I would hope that we could move forward in the spirit of compromise. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr Vickers. Thank you.
As no one's got any further questions, I think the panel members will retire to deliberate and make their decision. I should be grateful if you'd wait here whilst that takes place. So if you want to drink and get some water or whatever, it's over in the corner. I'm not sure it's licensed premises.
You'd need the police station for that. Thank you very much. Right, good afternoon, everyone. It is afternoon now this time. We've been deserted, I'm sorry about that. Right, everyone's here. The decision of the panel is that we will grant the application, but with slight modifications. Sunday to Thursday inclusive, 11 till 2000 hours, 8 o'clock. Friday and Saturday, 11 till 2200 hours. However, we will also treat Sundays of bank holidays as a Friday or a Saturday. That's it. We would, from a recommendation point of view, and it's a shame the residents aren't here because we would have liked them heard it, we would like to actually see a kind of more cooperation and engagement and dialogue, particularly in terms of complaints, that they are encouraged and logged and discussed. And to the extent that if a complaint's made, that they actually also write to the licensing authority to tell them that complaint's been made, and also hopefully how it's been dealt with, how you've responded, and we've also noted that you, in terms of events, if and when they are coming, as a matter of courtesy, we would like to see residents given as much notice as possible. We've seen this before as we've had other applications in the area. It's in the interests of all parties to actually see the enterprise succeed, but both parties, neighbours and residents and the business get on as neighbours, as part of the community. Totally agree. And that's it. I'm going to hand over to... That's a question. Pardon? Question?
Sunday to Thursday, 11 till 8. Friday, Saturday, 11 till 10. And then when a Sunday falls on a bank holiday falls on a Sunday, 11 till 10. And then the complaints and the residents' notice, that's all suggested measures. Yeah.
And during our discussions, we noted that a WhatsApp group was a very successful way, another licensed venue in the district where residents and the DPS were on that, so that it was highlighted and dealt with in a very kind of positive manner. I'm going to ask Mr. Bryant to come in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to clarify, the other part of the application from the applicants is the variation of the two conditions, the new condition and the removal of the old condition. Are those agreed by the panel as well?
They are.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to hand over to Mr. Vickers to...
Just to let you know that we'll confirm the outcome of that in writing. I'll post those out to you in due course, I imagine this week, next couple of days, yes. So, I think back to...
Okay, fine. Thank you very much indeed for your engagement and patience. Thank you. Thank you all. Oh, and the time